Breaking news, coronavirus deaths surging to over 10,000 in the U.S. The Surgeon General warning this week is our Pearl Harbor moment. Americans told to brace for the hardest times many will experience in their lives. But in New York, the epicenter, a glimmer of hope, what the governor has revealed here. Alarming news from London, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson battling coronavirus, now moved to intensive care as doctors say his condition has worsened. Late word from Richard Engel. Dire shortages on the front lines. We go inside one of the hardest hit ICUs in the nation. Plus the Situation Room clash over the unproven drug President Trump has repeatedly touted to treat COVID-19. Holy Week now underway and the rising concerns about houses of worship ahead of Passover and Easter.
They would rather come to church and worship like free people than they have live like prisoners.
Churches in a number of states still packed. Caring for a loved one showing symptoms. Our Kate Snow, her personal story, her husband quarantined in one part of the house, the struggles so many families are facing. And the surprise diagnosis, a Bronx Zoo tiger, the first animal in the U.S. to test positive. What does it mean for your pets?
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. There's late word tonight of the worsening condition of British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, now moved to the intensive care unit of a London hospital as he battles coronavirus. A major world leader now a face of a diagnosis shared by nearly 1.5 million people worldwide. And coming as the United States reached another staggering milestone, over 10,000 deaths, lives we mourn as we enter a week that health officials say will test us like nothing before. Our team is standing by, and we begin with NBC's Miguel Almaguer.
As Americans brace for what many expect will be a grim week, our national death toll has now hit a staggering new benchmark. The Surgeon General calling this week in the fight against the coronavirus our Pearl Harbor, our 9/11 moment. Behind each number, a heartbroken family. Police Sergeant J.J. Smith and wife Gloria were just starting a new life together after his retirement. They died days apart.
The world lost some of the most loving people.
With leaders at the White House urging Americans who don't need to shop this week to avoid grocery stores, states like New York are not alone in crisis. In Michigan, the Detroit Convention Center is becoming a massive field hospital. In Louisiana, where the governor maintains he didn't know Mardi Gras could trigger an outbreak, the New Orleans area now has the highest death rate in the country. At a nursing home in Indiana, 11 residents have died from the virus, while several others have been hospitalized.
Everyone is susceptible to this, and everyone needs to follow the precautions that we've laid out.
While cities like Boston are preparing for a 9 p.m. curfew, in Colorado, doctors unveiled a plan for how to prioritize life-saving treatment when faced with too many COVID-19 patients.
After 23 days, I'm still shedding the virus.
Nurse Lisa Merck, who caught the virus nearly a month ago, cleared her mandatory quarantine but tested positive again after she insisted on checking her status before returning to work.
I feel like it's just dangerous that we're not checking our healthcare workers before they go back to work.
Hospitals in the South need all the nurses and doctors they can get. Georgia experiencing a rapid rise in cases, but its peak may be weeks away. Blaine Alexander is in Atlanta.
Today starts the first full week of the state's shelter-in-place order. Most businesses are closed, but the governor has ordered the beaches back open. But some local leaders who closed the beaches in the first place call the move reckless.
After some Americans spent their first weekend wearing homemade face coverings in public, some regions still saw large gatherings like this farmers market in Los Angeles. Despite a weekend surge in ICU cases here in California, the governor is giving 500 ventilators to New York and other regions who desperately need them now. Mary Lou Armour, a Bay Area detective who got sick on the job, was on a ventilator for nearly a week. After being advised not to go to the ER when she arrived, doctors couldn't save her life.
I'm going to miss her voice. I'm going to miss her calling us.
Tonight, the true toll of this crisis still unfolding, measured one life at a time. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News, Los Angeles.
PPE!
This is Gabe Gutierrez in New York, where tonight nurses are reaching their limits. The U.S. military is deployed throughout the city, and the 2,500-bed Javits Convention Center is now the largest hospital in the country. But authorities say there could be a glimmer of hope. While deaths in New York State continue to rise, the increase has slowed over the last 2 days.
And again, would suggest a possible flattening of the curve.
Daily hospitalizations and intubations are also down.
We are plateauing. We are plateauing at a very high level, and there's tremendous stress on the healthcare system.
Governor Andrew Cuomo is warning New Yorkers not to let their guard down, doubling the fine for not social distancing to $1,000. He said President Trump agreed to his request that coronavirus patients be treated on the USNS Comfort.
It's a marathon, a sprint, and we're just, not at halftime yet.
Dr. Dara Cass from Columbia University Medical Center had the virus and has now been declared safe to return to work.
I went back into the ER empowered to go hold hands. That was all I wanted to do, because I wanted to hold hands with patients.
Funeral homes are overrun. This one in Brooklyn says it's running out of body bags.
We're overwhelmed. My staff they're on wit's end. They're sleep deprived. They're trying their best.
At St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx,
some people didn't make it today.
Dr. Ernie Patty shared with us this video at the end of a particularly grueling shift.
And I guess that's just, we did our best. That's all I can say. It's not been a good day. Really horrible.
Among the lives lost, Father Giacchino Basile, the Catholic Bishop of Brooklyn, called him small in stature, but mighty in energy. Mary Roman was not just a former city clerk in Connecticut. She was a senior Olympian who set shot put records and had survived polio.
She's a fighter, but in the end, this virus is nothing to play around with. It's a serious matter. And I just got the best of her. But he didn't get her without a fight. I can guarantee you that.
New York City officials are considering chilling contingency plans, including temporarily burying some of the dead if morgues are full. Authorities hope it doesn't come to that. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. And now more on that breaking news out of London, where British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who has been battling coronavirus, is now in intensive care, his condition worsening. Richard Engel has late details now from London.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tonight handed over his duties as head of government where necessary, a spokesman said, to a deputy after being moved to an ICU.
Well, the government's business will continue, and the Prime Minister is in safe hands.
Just hours earlier, Johnson tweeted, "I'm in good spirits and keeping in touch with my team." Johnson had been in isolation at home after being diagnosed last month and took time to cheer healthcare workers outside 10 Downing Street. His fiancée, pregnant with their first child, is also battling the virus. Days ago, the Prime Minister tweeted a video where he appeared unwell, but said he was feeling better and urged people to follow his government's social distancing guidance.
Stay at home, protect the NHS, and save lives.
That was a change of heart. Just weeks before his diagnosis, Johnson said he would not abide by social distancing.
I continue to shake hands.
The UK has been slower to react to the virus than many European countries. And officials here warn the worst is yet to come. And as temperatures have warmed in often rainy London, many Britons have been ignoring guidelines. In a rare address last night, the Queen urged the country to follow the guidelines.
I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge.
British authorities say the Prime Minister was admitted to this hospital conscious but having breathing difficulties and was transferred to an ICU in case he needed ventilation. Lester?
All right, Richard, thank you. Let's go now to Kristen Welker at the White House. Kristen, we so often see the president and vice president sharing the same relative spaces. Are they taking any additional measures to keep them safe?
Well, Lester, the White House is signaling they are not making any changes to better protect the president at this point. Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham telling NBC News, we're very confident in the protocols the White House has in place. The administration noting the president has tested negative twice. Already, White House doctors are doing regular testing for officials in close proximity to the president and vice president. President Trump has acknowledged it can be hard to keep a distance from Vice President Pence, but stresses they're both healthy. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker at the White House tonight. Thanks. And this evening, a raging controversy in the Trump administration over how aggressively to recommend an anti-malaria drug for COVID-19 patients. While the president embraces it, his top medical experts urge caution. Tom Costello takes a closer look.
Inside the White House, NBC News has confirmed a heated weekend exchange. Presidential advisor Peter Navarro facing off against infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci. Navarro pushing hydroxychloroquine for treating COVID-19 patients based on anecdotal studies overseas. Fauci saying those studies are not scientific, and chloroquine, a drug used to treat malaria and lupus, also carries cardiovascular risks. But the president continues to endorse the drug.
I would love to go to a laboratory and spend a couple of years testing something. We don't have time. We don't have 2 hours because there are people dying right now.
New Jersey nurse Margaret Novins believes chloroquine and an antibiotic combination helped her recover from COVID-19.
Within 24 hours, my fever was gone. I was still short of breath. I still had to recover from that.
New York hospitals are using it in emergencies, but the governor is cautious.
Anecdotally, you'll get suggestions that it has been effective, but we don't have any official data yet.
Meanwhile, an Inspector General watchdog report has found hospitals nationwide reporting dire shortages of critical equipment, including testing kits, thermometers, and personal protection equipment, and receiving government supplies that expired a decade ago.
We heard an incredible plea from the hospitals about their efforts to keep staff safe.
And amid a widespread shortage of ventilators, a potential shortage of the drugs used to place patients into comas for intubation.
These drugs are crucial to ventilators working and the patients being able to recover and beat COVID-19.
Pharmaceutical companies are now ramping up production of those drugs, trying to keep up with the crushing demand. Lester?
All right. Tom Costello, thanks very much. We'll be right back in just 60 seconds, going behind the front lines at one of the hardest hit hospitals. And when the virus hits home, a personal account from our own Kate Snow that every family should see. Back now, and we continue our look at life on the front lines of the coronavirus fight. Tonight, Stephanie Goss takes us inside the ICU at one of the nation's hardest hit hospitals.
Holy Name Medical Center in northern New Jersey is a community hospital, medium size. Many of the staff were actually born here. It was also one of the hospitals hit earliest and hardest by the coronavirus. 55 deaths so far, 175 infected people hospitalized.
Just checking everything out for you, okay? Just making sure all your lines are good.
Arlene Van Dyke, a single mother of two, has been an ICU nurse at Holy Name for 32 years.
I'm just going to assess them first.
At a time when family can't be there, bedside manner takes on new meaning. Each 13-hour shift brings new challenges.
Exhausting. Today was really rough.
Michelle Acito is the director of nursing.
The nursing staff have been amazing. Every time they go into a patient room, they know that not only are they the caregiver, but they are the stand-in family member.
And sometimes it is their family. 3 of Acito's relatives have tested positive for coronavirus, including her mother-in-law, Edna Acito, who was hospitalized here and celebrated her 89th birthday with nurses singing.
Happy birthday to you.
2 days later, she died.
They sang to her. She knew they were there. She was mouthing the words, and it was really just sweet and adorable. And the family appreciated having that video, knowing that her last birthday here on Earth was celebrated with people around her.
This hospital, like so many, has had to transform during the crisis. It started with 19 ICU beds. By the end of this week, it will have 106. Many of those patients on ventilators for days and even weeks. Good news is in short supply, but last week there was a victory. the first patient to be successfully removed off a ventilator.
We see the sickest of the sick, so we forget that there's people that do well. So this was a huge thing for us.
For a hospital battling the worst of this virus, a welcome reminder that all their work is making a difference. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Teaneck, New Jersey.
Across the country, families are caring for loved ones quarantined at home. Among them, our senior national correspondent, Kate Snow, who is sharing her family story after her husband, Chris, developed symptoms. What could be any family story.
None of us are talking to Chris face to face, even though he's right downstairs.
Welcome to day whatever. Everything's the same in these four walls.
I go down with a mask on. I walk up to the door.
I left you eggs and toast.
We had made a plan that if any of us got sick, we would go to our guest room, which is in the basement.
Every time after I go down there, I wash my hands.
He describes it as massive muscle, not just aches, but pain. I have 2 teenagers who are trying to help, but they're also going to school. I spent all morning Friday and much of the day Saturday disinfecting.
God bless my neighbor. Dropped off milk. Yesterday I did about 10 loads of laundry.
I'm just tired. I'm tired. I know that we are super lucky that we have so much support. My biggest fear, like I'm sure so many families right now, is that he will take a turn for the worse and he won't be able to breathe and that I'll have to take him to the hospital. So I made a plan with my neighbor that if I have to leave and the kids are alone, she'll help them. That's my biggest fear, is that I won't be able to take care of my kids. I have so much appreciation for everyone right now, for the people bringing me my mail, for the people bringing me groceries, for just the people sending me text messages.
It's really cool. There's a lot going on in everyone else's world, and they had really wonderful things to say to my wife and myself.
And I want to say thank you because I can't even keep up. So thank you.
And Kate, we're wishing you, Chris, and the kids well. We thank you all for reminding us of how important it is to have a plan and be prepared in all this. This week, as so many prepare for Passover and Easter, there are growing concerns about some houses of worship still holding large services despite urgent pleas for social distancing. More on that now from NBC's Katie Beck.
Despite empty houses of worship, many are virtually packing the aisles from home.
Thank you for joining us.
Some even taking a safe route to confession. But in at least a dozen states where churches are exempt from stay-at-home orders and some where they're not, followers gather in number and in person as they did on Palm Sunday in Ohio.
There's God's law, and then there's man's law. Me and my household, we put God's law first.
And in Louisiana, a state with one of the highest number of COVID-19 deaths, Pastor Tony Spell says 1,200 people showed up Sunday. The massive crowd days after his arrest for hosting last week's service, which authorities say violated the governor's orders.
They would rather come to church and worship like free people than they had live like prisoners in their homes for 22 days.
And Pastor Joel Garza vows to keep his church doors open in Texas, where churches are deemed essential.
I think it's utterly ridiculous that they're doing what they're doing.
With several states suspending in-person primary voting and religious holidays just days away, many wonder if states will soon toughen their stance on in-person worship as well and insist faith leaders serve online.
We're all together. We are, all one family. And I think that also gives a little bit of that spiritual strength as we face this crisis.
Together in spirit, finding prayer in a pandemic. Katie Beck, NBC News.
And up next tonight, after a zoo tiger tests positive in the U.S., the question tonight, is your pet safe from the virus? Welcome back. Dr. John Torres joins me now. And John, we know that a tiger in the Bronx Zoo got the virus. It led a lot of us to wonder, does that mean our pets are vulnerable too?
Lester, certain animal species react differently to new diseases, but so far there have been no reports of dogs, cats, or other pets in the U.S. getting sick. Still, you should take precautions. If you have COVID-19, someone else needs to take care of your animal and limit interactions with your pet just like you would with other people. If you're healthy, wash your hands before and after doing anything with your pet. And when you're outside, social distancing applies to your animals too. No playing with other people. Lester?
Good to know. Dr. John, thanks very much. Up next, the amazing grace of America's doctors and nurses. Finally tonight, a nurse on the front lines lifting spirits during a shift change at a hospital in Livonia, Michigan. Nurse Lori Marie Key inspiring her colleagues and us.
Sing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Yes.
And our thanks to Nurse Lori Marie Key. How sweet the sound indeed. And thank you to all the doctors, nurses, paramedics, and everyone on the front lines out there. We need you. That's Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.